The Tower of London is the oldest palace, fortress and prison in Europe. It is said to be one of the most haunted and scariest places in the world, full of dark history where people suffered such horrific deaths. The Tower of London was built by William the Conqueror in 1078. Did you know at least 6 ravens are kept in the Tower of London at all time for superstitious reasons? The flock of ravens even include a spare. Each raven has a wing clipped to make sure they don't fly too far from home. It's believed if they escape, the kingdom will fall. The Tower of London has been besieged many times in the past, as kings and conquerors believed that in order to control the country, the tower must be controlled first. During the 15th century, the castle was used as a prison. However, the peak period of the castle's use as a prison was actually in the 16th and 17th centuries. Elizabeth I was one of the many well-known figures who were held captive in the tower. It's said that 22 executions took place within the Tower of London. Executions by beheading were considered the least brutal of execution methods. An axe was the common use for a beheading, but death by the axe was a very terrifying prospect, as the executioners often took several blows with the axe before the head was finally cut off. On very rare occasions, a sword was used, such as in the case of Anne Boleyn, where a swordsman from France came to undertake the execution. The last person to be executed at the Tower of London was a German spy, Joseph Jacobs, which was on August the 15th, 1941, after him being caught parachuting into England. He was seated in a chair when he was shot. Now I'm going to tell you some of the creepy ghost stories that have been reported around the Tower of London. There have been many reports in the past of a headless ghost, which many believe could possibly be Anne Boleyn roaming around corridors of the White Tower. She was one of the 2 wives that were ordered for execution by their husband, King Henry VIII, the other wife being Catherine Howard, who has been seen and heard screaming behind the doors of the room she was kept in before she was actually executed. The Bloody Tower is very well known for its evil past. There is a story of 2 young princes, one named Edward and the other named Richard. They were declared illegitimate by Parliament and then both sent to the tower. They were often seen playing around the grounds, but suddenly they vanished and were never seen again. It was believed that they were both murdered by order of their uncle, who was the Duke of Gloucestershire. 2 skeletons, which are believed to be Edward and Richard's, were actually unearthed beneath a staircase in the White Tower in 1674. The ghosts of Edward and Richard are often seen wearing nightgowns and holding each other very tightly in terror in the rooms of the castle. They are also heard throughout the tower crying and screaming. An area in which King Henry VIII's armour is normally stored has an evil reputation. Several stories exist of guards being either attacked or feeling threatened by an unknown force. Many have reported feeling sensations of feeling crushed and simply unable to breathe. Lord Guildford Dudley, who was the husband to Lady Jane Grey, were both condemned to death for high treason in November 1553. There have been many reported sightings of Lady Jane Grey and also Lord Guildford Dudley, who is said to appear in this tower with tears running down his face. The Bloody Tower is also home to the ghost of Sir Walter Raleigh, who is said to wander around the area and also along the battlements, now known as Raleigh's Walk. One visitor reported seeing a phantom woman in a long black dress standing by a window. The witness had time to see what the figure was actually wearing, which was a white hat and a gold pendant, before this figure vanished. For years after his execution, Guy Fawkes' screams and cries could be heard coming from the room where he was prepared for the end. During World War II, a guard on duty reported seeing a group of people in old uniforms walking towards the entrance to the tower. They was carrying a stretcher containing a headless body. The guard was in absolute shock, and suddenly the figures faded away just before they reached the soldier. Henry Percy was locked up inside the tower for 16 years. His ghost has been reportedly seen along the battlements at Martin Tower. Some also say Henry Percy tries to push visitors and guards down the steps by the tower. Around 1817, Edmund Swifty, who was the keeper of the crown jewels, lived in the tower with his family. On one Sunday, he and his family were terrified by a tall, strange column of what looked like liquid which drifted through their room. Swifty's wife panicked and said it tried to grab her as it passed. It disappeared as soon as Swifty threw a chair at it. The item passed clean through without impact. These are just some of the ghostly goings on inside the Tower of London. It must be one of the most scariest and well-known haunted locations around the whole world. Just imagine being locked up at night. I truly wonder what a person would experience around the Tower of London.
5.
Adam Thorogood House, Virginia Beach, Virginia. Dating to about 1720, although previously thought to be much older, this quaint brick cottage was once the home of Adam Thorogood, a successful tobacco farmer and businessman. While it has had a rather uneventful history over the past 3 centuries, activity within the house hasn't been so quiet. 2 apparitions are commonly sighted here, one being a man and the other a woman, both in 18th century attire. The woman has been known to carry candles throughout the house, while the man is simply observed passing from room to room, perhaps looking for something. A large group of visitors even witnessed the sudden movement of objects.
4.
Cedar Grove Mansion, Vicksburg, Mississippi, one of the most striking antebellum mansions in Mississippi. Cedar Grove has, for all of its beauty, seen its fair share of tragedy. Originally the home of John and Elizabeth Klein, it was also the site of some of the family's deaths. One of their sons was killed on the back porch stairs when a gun accidentally went off. He was just 17 years old, and a daughter and 2 young infants died here as well, with their deaths attributed to disease. John Klein enjoyed pipe smoking, and near his study the smell of a pipe is often caught. Elizabeth has frequently been seen throughout this house, acting as if she's simply carrying out her usual day-to-day chores. The apparition of a little girl has also been seen coming down the main stairs. Footsteps on the back porch stairs have also been heard. Apart from activity linked to the family, many guests have reported seeing Civil War soldiers throughout the house and the grounds. Hardly surprising, since the house was also a hospital during the Civil War and is a hotel today.
3.
Morris Jamel Mansion, New York City, a pre-Revolutionary War landmark. This 1765 house was built by a British military officer and would later feature in a Revolutionary War, with George Washington even using the house as his headquarters at one point. It seems that with all of this past activity, spirits in the house are a little restless themselves. Several different, distinct ghosts have been sighted here over the years, most of which seem to be from the Revolutionary period and the early decades following it. Former owner Eliza Jamel has been seen here, and the presence of both her husbands, one of which was former Vice President Burr, have all been reported. Ghosts here have a bit of history with startling visitors. One visitor actually fainted upon seeing a Revolutionary War soldier step out of a painting, and another suffered a heart attack upon seeing one of the house's ghosts.
2.
Soja Castle, Kansas City, built in 1871 by Anton Soja, originally from Austria. This beautiful but now derelict Italianate home was a Soja residence for several generations, during which time it was the site of many of the family's traumatic tragedies. 2 people have committed suicide in this house, while a third, a little girl, drowned in the pool on the property. The original owner, Anton, also passed away in this house. With so many deaths, most of which were not peaceful, the house has become a hotbed for the supernatural. Various disembodied voices have been heard, either laughing, shouting or crying, while doors often open and slam on their own. People have reported feeling watched, and that objects have had a tendency to shake or rattle violently, all on their own.
1.
The Sallie House, Atchison, Kansas. Few haunted houses in America have had the level of malevolency that has been reported in this particular house. Once a doctor's house, a little girl named Sallie died here during a botched appendectomy, and her spirit has been here ever since. When a family moved in during the 90s, this little girl began to create mischief, knocking pictures down, toying with electrical appliances, and leaving a trail of their child's toys throughout the house. This activity eventually escalated to a violent level, but while they originally thought it was a little girl that their child had seen, they inevitably learned through a medium that it was actually a middle-aged woman who was responsible for the violence. All of her malevolence was directly towards the male owner of the house, repeatedly scratching and gorging him, leaving deep red welts and scratching deep enough to cause bleeding and bruises. After the entity shoved him and almost sent him falling over the railing of the stairs on the second floor, the family finally moved out of fear for his life. These activities have been documented by several paranormal groups,